I hope the chat works tonight. I know like last time it worked okay. The time before that, it was, I think with Jake. People were messaging me and they're like, I'm here. I don't know why it's not letting me comment. I hope it works out.
I feel like I've been having more and more tech issues with social media and YouTube and whatnot more recently, and I have no idea what's going on. I think a lot of people are, and it's just like this weird thing that's happening. And it's like, well, okay, it's just like this weird stuff in the air, and everyone's experiencing it all the time.
I'm pretty sure technology is just like rebelling. Like they didn't sign up to be used this much. They didn't think that they were going to be on everyone's screen for 1 million hours a day. They're like, nah, we're tired. We're done with this.
Right. All
Raquel's here already. We have people coming in. Hello, if you're here, if you're joining us. Wonder if Chris and Brett and Nikisi finished. I imagine some folks will slide over once they're done. 3 people watching. Mia, if you're here, it's late. I feel like you should be in bed. But if you're here, hi. I don't know if you've seen any Reshma where I say hi to Mia. Do you know Mia, the yarn goddess?
I don't know. I'm gonna say no.
I am on a mission. I want to be Mia when I grow up, and I am on a mission to make sure everyone is following her. She is amazing. She knits, she crochets, she does Tunisian, I think. I might be making that up. And she's 14.
Get out of here.
Yeah. And she's like so cool and like is so authentic and speaks her mind and stands up for like what she believes in. And she's so cool, but she let me know one day, she's like, Bree, I come to all of your videos. I just can't comment because I'm not old enough. And I was like, so I always say hi to Mia in case Mia's watching. Cool. So you have your drink now. Are you cool to jump in and get started and people sort of roll in?
Yeah, let's do this.
Cool. Just kicked everyone out to watch this. So excited. I guess the live ended. Jocelyn's here. Hey, Jocelyn. Cool. Welcome, everyone, as you're sort of popping in. Hello to everybody who's watching later. Welcome to the final week. Final with an asterisk because it is the final week of this series, this season, I guess, maybe, of the Self-Care Collaborative. 2020 is coming to a close. We're at week 19. 19 weeks. It has been a ride, and we made it to the end. If you're here and you've started from the beginning, thanks for hanging in there the past 4 months, I think. 4 months? 5 months? I guess we're in 5 months, right? If you're just checking us out for the first time, thanks for coming to check us out. There's 18 more videos that are like this that you could go check out. So good news for you, it's not really ending. I'm super, super excited for tonight. 1, because I'm in my PJs. 2, because I have a good drink. 3, because I am with a maker who I have a major, major girl crush on. She is like my maker crush. If y'all know me, you know this. And she is just like, I don't know, maker goals. Is that a thing? Do people still use hashtags? I feel like that would be the thing. Casey's here. Hey, Casey. And before we jump in and let her introduce herself, which feels silly because I feel like she needs no introduction, I will say, because this is our last week, all of the prizes up until this point have been sent out. The winners were chosen, the winners were notified, and the only thing we have left is the grand prize. So if you're watching these videos, make sure you're playing along, posting along on Instagram, whether you're responding to a challenge or homework assignment from one of the makers, whether you're just doing your own thing, that's your form of taking care of yourself. Make sure you post tag me and use the hashtag self-care collaborative 2020 because it started last year, and you're going to be entered to win a prize. The prize, I think it's big time. It's a $75 gift card to my shop. Whatever you want. It can be a mystery club, it can be charms, it can be accessories, whatever you want. That's $75. I would probably create a custom color if you wanted to. I enjoy doing that. So it's going to be a really good prize. I'm going to leave the thread, the hashtag open until the end of March, and I'm going to choose a winner at the end of March. So if you're a few weeks behind or you want to catch up and get more posts in, you still have 2 weeks to do so. And I know I've said this before, but if you've been entering and using the hashtag all along and you haven't won yet, don't worry, because I use all of the hashtags that have been posted since day one, which was, I think, was November 1st, toward every month's prize. So you still have a chance to win. So definitely keep using the hashtag. I think that's all I have to say about that. So with no further ado, go ahead, Reshma, introduce yourself, tell the people who you are, where they can find you. Yeah.
Hi guys. Well, I'm Reshma of Hello Lavender Design. You can find me only on Instagram. I used to have a Facebook page and I just got sick of it, so no longer on Facebook. Had to cut that out of my life. So IG is it at Hello Lavender Design. That's me. And my website, which isn't really too exciting, but hellolavender.com.
I feel like that's a subjective thing, and I imagine there are a lot of people who would say that your website is actually very exciting, but
that's where you can like find my products, but I don't update it. I'm so bad at that stuff. I need to start a newsletter, which I've been saying for like 3 years now. And at one point, I think 2 years ago, my like Instagram just took away my entire page for an entire day, and I flipped out. And even then, like after that, I would have started a newsletter or something, or like, come on, no. It's like a top priority, but it's not at the same time. I don't know. There's just so much else going on. I don't know. But that's what but now Mike works with me, so like he's supposed to get on that this year.
Is that in his position description? Because that's like probably the only reason I would ever get an employee. Because like, okay, to be honest, I'm going to make an assumption here, Reshma, so like correct me if I'm wrong. I can't imagine that you got into your business and started your business because you enjoy the like business side of it. I imagine it's because you enjoyed the creation piece. And it's really funny, I think, when you talk to folks. Like my sister is also a maker and she's starting her shop, but she's a graphic designer and went to school for marketing. So she like knows what you're supposed to do. And sometimes she'll like ask me questions and be like, what do you use for your newsletter? What do you use for this? And I'm like, no. She's like, are you serious? Like you're trying to run a business? Like, I don't know. So it's working so far.
Yeah, I worked in marketing for 4 years and as a graphic designer, and for another small business, local small business, and I ran their social media and I did their newsletter, and so I know the platforms that are out there. But I didn't like it. Like it was not my thing, but it was in that job description, so I did it. But you're absolutely right. I don't like the admin work. I don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Up the website and the tech and all that's not my thing. I can do it, sure, but yeah, creating and designing and knitting and colors and art, that's my jam.
That makes sense. And so tell the people, maybe for people who don't know you as well or have just sort of found you more recently, tell us a little bit about your journey in making and creating and design that you're talking about. Like, where did you start? How did you get into this world?
It's all over the place, but I think that's like part of the magic.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people will also agree that's part of their journey too, which I think it's amazing. You just kind of you try little things here and there and you just kind of find your way, and that's the path. And so I've been crocheting since I was 10, so itty bitty. I'm 35 now. I don't even know how old I am. Mike just gave me a thumbs up. He's over there working on packaging orders. I honestly forget how old I am, but my mom crochets, and I grew up watching her. She would crochet me cardigans and dresses and little tops for my Barbies, and she crocheted me pillows. And when I was old enough, and I showed even more of an interest, she taught me. So I started crocheting, and just simple chains at first, and double crochet, and like super long scarves and blankets and stuff like that. And then I crocheted on and off through college and stuff like that, but it wasn't a huge part of what I was doing. And I went to school for interior design, and so that's my bachelor degree is it's fine arts and interior design, and that's I've always painted and I draw and just creative all around. It's ever since I could hold a pencil. So like the creativity part of me has always been there. And I think I also get that from my mom.
Yeah.
So it's in the family. And then when I graduated, the housing market and architecture market and all of that just kind of tanked. That was like when the housing crisis, no one was remodeling. And so, there's a lot of misconception between an interior decorator and an interior designer too. So like my degree is in actually designing and working with architects. So the architects build and design the structure and the foundation of the house, and the interior designers do the inside. So I know codes and how thick walls need to be and where electrical goes and piping and plumbing and all that jazz. And don't put a bathroom over here and how big a bathroom needs to be, accessibility, like all that jazz.
Yeah.
So I went into, and as part of that degree, I had to take graphic design work and Photoshop and Illustrator. I took textiles. So I did all about fabrics and yarn and, fiber. So that it's just all woven into me throughout the years in one way or another. And worked in graphic design for a while. And after I had my first daughter, Aria, 6 years ago, I went on maternity leave and I never back. It was also a very toxic work environment. I knew I wasn't going back. It was very bad. And after that, I worked part-time for an architecture firm from home, doing CAD renderings and stuff for them. It wasn't really working out. And I made wooden blocks for Aria, and they were all hand painted, and I posted them on my personal IG page, and a bunch of friends were like, "Oh, you should sell these. These are amazing." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know if people would like these. Like they're fun, sure, but people can buy blocks at the store. No one wants these." And that's how I started. So Hello Lavender, I did hand painted wooden stuff like home decor signs and wooden blocks and little toys for kids with some crochet items mixed in, because I didn't know how to knit at that point. I had attempted to a few times, but it never clicked. And finally, obviously it did click, and here I am just knitting. But yeah, so it's just been stuff here and there. And then I did knit stuff for a while. Once I figured that out, I would do craft shows, which I hated. It was not my thing, but it's something. I feel like it's like a rite of passage almost. have to do the shows, you have to put up your booth, and you gotta do.
Yeah. I think that's like what differentiates the like knitters with a capital K. Like, did you start at a craft show and now have you moved on from there? Because that feels like that's part of that process.
Yeah. And meeting the people at the shows was always fun. I enjoyed that part of it, but they're just such long days, and I was away from the kids. Mostly Aria at that point. I wasn't really doing a bunch of shows after Riley, but yeah, they're just long, and some of them I was doing by myself. Thankfully, Mike was with me for a lot of them, which was a huge help. But the ones where you're all by yourself, you can't really leave your booth unless you really trust the booth mate or someone who's next to you. And if you're outdoors in the Midwest, which I did, fortunately, those were huge mistakes because weather is unpredictable. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Stress inducing. I like still get worked up thinking about those days. Like my heart, like my chest is tight right now. I'm like, oh no.
There are a bunch of people who are watching this video that are like screaming and cringing hearing you say that.
Yeah, not fun, but had to get the word.
Yeah, sorry. Continue.
No, it's fine.
I like didn't know. I like thought I knew a little bit about your journey, but like there's so much of that I was like, I had no idea about like one, that knitting is so recent for you, because I feel like is it your first? Do you like it more than crochet? I feel like most of what you do now is knitting.
So here, let me go back. I do still enjoy crochet, but I don't really do it that much because I think like knitting's been, like when you find that new hobby after whatever, like you just like consume yourself and you want to just like, learn everything. So that's been knitting for me, but it's been, I think 3 or 4 years since I've been knitting. I've always wanted to knit, even when I was crocheting. Cables, knit cables were my thing, and I did the crochet cables, and I'm like, no, it's just not the same. I'm like, okay. And so after Aria was born, it's like 2 or 3 weeks after she was born, super tired, not sleeping, and I bought these super cheap bamboo needles off of Amazon, and I had worsted weight yarn. I'm like, I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna make a scarf. And I look up some YouTube videos and some blogs, and I was doing it, but so many drop stitches, so scary when you're learning to knit. I'm like, I don't know how to go back crochet. You just rip back and it's fun. And it just wasn't working. And I partly blame that for just having a baby and not sleeping. And my brain was just so fuzzy. I'm like, probably not a great time to pick up a new hobby and learn something completely different. But and so I didn't touch it for a year, I think, after that. And then I tried again, and it still wasn't clicking for me for some third time. And I think I put it down again for another year. So it's been like 2 or 3 years at this point where I'm like, and the third time, for some reason, it just finally clicked. And Amy, a Ponda Bird, and I were talking, and she actually lives in the same town I do. And we used to get together and do like crochet nights at a local cafe, and that like we were crocheters. And I told Amy, and she's like, I just don't know how you knit. And I'm like, Amy, just try it again. She's like, I did. And so like I tell people, I'm like, you can try once, you can try 2 times or 3 or whatever, and it like might not click, but do it again, because like something just clicked. And I can't explain it. And like you might get it the 3rd or 4th time, but it like cables are what got me into it. And I love making garments like sweaters and cardigans and stuff like that, and I've always been wanting to do that. And when back in the day there weren't super awesome wearable crochet garments out there, like they're just very stiff and boxy, and I like never really thought they were flattering or, you know, different. There weren't as many sizes or adjustments that you could do in patterns, you know, back when I was crocheting in like the
Yeah.
early, which has completely changed now. Like there are so many amazing crochet designers, but that's what really got me into knitting and why I've kind of stuck with it, is because I just wanted to make my own clothes for so long.
I so appreciate that piece of like stick with it and like thing will click, and like not even knowing necessarily what changed or what's different, because I think I see that so much. Like, so I'm a therapist by day, and so one of the things I brought to the counseling center where I work is like, let's start a knit group, like let's teach kids how to knit, because if we're talking about like stress management, like coping skills, like that's really been a big part of my life. So like, why not bring it to other people? And there are so many students, and I am so inspired by them, who like come back semester after semester and they're like, I don't get it. Like I quit last time, I couldn't figure it out. And then suddenly something happens and they just get it. And they're like, oh, I don't know what changed. I didn't do anything different, but like they say it's like a switch that goes off like in your head. And then it's like, oh my gosh, this makes sense now. And so I appreciate that piece of sharing your experience, that it like wasn't an easy thing to come into for you and took a few tries to get there.
And I think sometimes we just need distance from something, or our headspace isn't in learning that specific thing. Something else is going on and we are not realizing it. You just need to step back and kind of do something else, or something that's familiar, and try something completely new, or, you know, whatever it is, and then come back when you feel ready. And then maybe, you know, like you'll be more connected with it the next time, and that's why it clicks. I don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate that piece of sometimes like stepping away. I don't know. I think folks feel like stepping away is like quitting or giving up, but sometimes like stepping away from a thing actually helps you move forward. And so one of the things, obviously, why we're here tonight to talk about self-care, one of the things I appreciate so much about your account, and I think the parts of yourself that you bring to your account, is that you feel really like open and genuine and share more than just the things you're making, the things you're selling. And so I love, especially in your stories, like seeing you in a face mask that you're like, yeah, self-care time, or talking about like having a migraine and needing to take a day. And so I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about like what self-care means to you, and like what it might look like in your life.
I think it changes. Like it changes daily, weekly, monthly, or whatever season of life I'm in. I don't know. And it doesn't come easy for me either. I come from a family of like, you work, work, work until you retire and you provide for your family, and you don't talk about needing rest, and you don't do it, you just push through it. And for so long I struggled with it until recently, honestly. But it's I'm always working on it, and I'll find myself being like, oh no, I can't take a break right now. But then I'm like, physically I cannot push myself anymore, and I have to just stop and be like, okay, no, if I don't stop now, then I can't do anything later or tomorrow, which in the long run hurts me even more. So, you know, right now self-care is just me acknowledging the pain that I'm in and accepting it and slowing down, and knowing that me slowing down isn't me quitting. Me slowing down doesn't mean that I'm not working hard, or I'm not successful, or I'm not doing my job. And I'm accepting it more. Mike usually has to come in and tell me like, hey, take a break. He's setting timers on his phone, and if he's upstairs or in another room with the girls, he'll like text me. It's like, hey, it's been an hour, stretch, and stuff like that. So yeah, I've been dealing with a lot of migraines lately, and it sucks, but I've been trying to slow down. But yeah, self-care is just different for everyone. Like sometimes it's me in a face mask, but like other times it's me like rage cleaning the house, and that's self, because if I don't, then I'm stressing even more. So it's different every day. I think you just kind of have to listen to what your mind and body needs in that moment, and you kind of just go with it and do it.
That feels so important for people to hear, though, because I think there's like this idea out in the world that like this is what self-care looks like, and there's starting to be some recognition that like it looks different for different people, but when you figure out what works for you, that's what it always looks like. And like always go back and do the same thing, and it's like, well, hold on a minute, like that's really how humans work. Like hammers are very useful tools if you have a nail, and if you have another situation, like another tool might actually work a little bit better. And why would we sort of restrict ourselves to, I know this is what works, so I'm only going to do that one thing. And so I like that idea of like having flexibility and recognizing that change in how you take care of yourself is like not only okay, but it's actually just part of the process, which also is important that like it is a process. I think so many people, when I first started posting about the self-care collaborative and reaching out to folks, were like, oh no, I can't do that, I'm not good at self-care. And I was like, what does that mean? They're like, oh, there are a lot of days where I really struggle with it. And I'm like, yeah, like that's what it looks like. That's part of the process.
Yeah.
If it's easy, then it probably wouldn't be so helpful. But like, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and we're all evolving, so what worked for us maybe a month ago or a year ago may not work now. And a different person a year ago or before I had kids, and what self-care was to me before I had kids is completely different than what it is to me now after having kids. Like, I just want to lay down on the couch and watch an episode of Schitt's Creek for 30 minutes, and I'm okay with that, and that really helps me. Whereas before kids, like, let's go to a concert and stay out and go to the bars or whatever, which I never really did, but like that was self-care to me back then, because that's what made me feel good. So when it just evolves as you evolve, and you kind of have to recognize it. And in the moment, like if you're doing something that used to be calming for you, or a stress reliever, and it's not doing it for you, and like then you just kind of have to think like, oh well, maybe I should try something else now.
Yeah, especially I think this year a lot of people are like, oh, my thing's not working for me anymore. And I'm like, do you need to be reminded what has happened in the last 12 months, not just in this country, but like in the world? Like we're in the middle of a pandemic. There's racial injustice everywhere you look. Like the political climate was terrifying for most of the last year. Like, of course it's not working. We're in a different environment. Like the game has changed. I don't know, the same thing that works in a baseball game isn't going to work in a football game. And like things just flipped really quickly. So someone in the comments, Maria's here. Hi, Maria. Says, that's really sweet of your husband to be supportive. And I'm wondering, Reshma, if you could talk a little bit more about this, because I think I've heard people say, I'm not good at self-care because I rely on my partner or I rely on my friend and they sort of help me through it. And I don't know, I feel like it's important to like push back on that idea that like self-care needs to be a solitary thing. And if you're doing it with other people, that means you're like not doing it right, or like because you can't do it on your own. And so I'm curious to hear more about like what that is like for you, that it actually sounds like your self-care is a little bit more like team oriented in your house.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be a solitary thing. I mean, sometimes some of the things I do are solitary, but in other ways, Mike and I feel like, I don't know. Mike and I have been a team for over 17 years now. And now, like, he's been home for a year. Like, he's been,
Mhm.
or he quit his job and he was working from home since the pandemic and everything like that. And we do everything together, which I don't know, it sounds corny, but we kind of help each other in a lot of ways. Like he knows my strengths and weaknesses and I know his, and we kind of help each other out. And I think that's really important. And if I didn't have that support in ways, then yeah, I think that would affect me too. But I don't think self-care needs to be a solitary thing. If your partner is there to help you or remind you, then that's awesome because that gives you the little extra push that you need. Because if you do struggle with it, then they're kind of like your little backbone, your support.
Mhm.
That, hey, you got to do this, then you'll feel better. And I think that's really, and then like it's like another extra boost. It's like, oh, he cares about me, or
Yeah.
but like we've gotten into skincare. This sounds really funny and cheesy, but like trying, like doing face masks and like
Mhm.
washing our face together, and like it's so hard with like two little ones running around the house. Like some days we don't even shower, and that's just the reality of it. And we're running around trying to like get dinner or food and lunch, and we're homeschooling them, and like showering is like the last priority on our list. And in the beginning of all of it, we're like, I just feel gross right now. Like, well, yeah, we haven't showered in a few days. And, we're like, oh, skin's breaking out. Like, oh no, I feel like I'm a teenager again, like all these zits. And we're like, okay, okay, okay. We got to do something for ourselves. And so, like, now after we put the girls to bed, like, we'll go into our bathroom and, like, we'll wash our face together. And before, like, we just kind of put it off. It's like, okay, well, we have to go do the dishes now. And I have to go ship orders. And it's like, no, we're going to take 5-10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is. We're going to do this together and take care of ourselves, and take care of our face and our skin, and we're gonna do it. And we do it together, and that's part of our self-care, I think. But we do it together, and I think that's important. Because before would be off doing his own thing and I'd be off doing my own thing, and we forget, and it's not helping anyone really. Now that we do it together, we kind of remind each other too.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it's not just like, oh, we keep each other accountable, but it also then like takes something that could be like a chore or like, ugh, I just have to get this done. And it makes it like, I don't know, maybe like fun is too strong of a word, but it's like a thing that you share with someone. And like that always makes it more fun for me to be able to be like, oh, like, let's do this together. And we go through that like shared experience, even if it's something like trying to take care of your skin or your physical self, or like trying a new product and like using it together. I don't know. It sounds like it just makes it more of an exciting experience than like a chore or another thing to do.
Right. Well, and like we haven't been really going anywhere, and it's like it's almost like our time together. Like the kids are bed and we get to do this thing together. It's almost like when you used to have like sleepovers with your girlfriends and back in high school or whatever, and you do like your face mask and you be in your jammy. So it is. It's fun. It's totally fun.
I love that. And I'm glad too that you brought up being parents and running a business, because I don't know, I only have to worry about taking care of myself. And like this year has felt challenging to find time to do that. It's like, oh, I'm always working, and work is in my kitchen now, so it's really hard to like find boundaries and step away. And I know I've been talking to a lot of my friends who have kids, and I'm like, I can't even imagine how much harder that is. And I mean, it sounds like a challenge. Do you find like the past year has been particularly more challenging because of the pandemic, or is this just like life of a mom with 2 small children?
I mean, being a parent is hard. Like, even without the pandemic, hard. But no, add the pandemic on top of that, and it's very, very like 1,000 more times harder because a lot of us are doing virtual school or homeschooling, or your kids are going to school and you're worried about them, and it, and parents are trying to juggle working from home and homeschooling, virtual schooling, whatever. And Mike was working from home at the beginning of all this, and I've been home doing the business thing. And, in the beginning, he was working his full time hours, and I had no time to get my stuff done. And we did for a few months in the beginning. I'm like, this isn't working. And so then he went down to part time hours. And then so he would work in the mornings while I would watch the girls and do homeschooling. And then he would be off in the afternoon, and then we would switch, and it was kind of a back and forth tag team. But it's very stressful. And now we've been doing this for a year, and it, like, in some ways, yeah, we've gotten used to it, and certain days are easier than others, but I think we're all just so exhausted at this point that it's just getting harder. I don't know. I think overall it's just getting harder because there's no end in sight. At least for us, we don't really see it. And there's been no break. And it's tough. You can't, like both our parents live in town, and we had, they're a huge support system for us, and they would help watch the kids before, and we would be able to get away for, a night, a couple of hours for a date night or whatever. And that was a good breather, and, or you have a babysitter or whatever. And we did that for a year, and it's just constant. And I think we're all at our breaking points now. And I think we're even more stressed now than we were last year.
Yep.
And it's hard. So we're like trying to find more ways to like take breaks and different ways to like kind of relax ourselves and take care of the stress levels and anxiety and, all of that.
Yeah. I feel like I've said it before in one of these videos, but I'll say it again because it feels really relevant. And if people haven't seen, it feels like the past year, I was talking with some people at work trying to make sense of exactly what you're saying. Like, how are we more tired now? Like, why haven't we adjusted and like gotten used to it? And reflecting on this idea that the past year has felt like sprinting. So like, I don't know, we're coming up on exactly a year. I think for us, where I work, the university shut down on the 12th. So I think tomorrow is like officially a year, but it feels like things happened so quickly. And it was like, obviously an emergency situation that it was like, you just do what you need to do. Like you were on the track and coach was like, you got to sprint it out. And it was like, okay, fine. Like I'll sprint. That's fine. I'll do what I have to do. And then we went around the track and we thought we were done. And coach was like, no, keep going. And it was like, oh, okay, I'll keep going. And like, again and again and again. And now it's a year later. And it's like, oh my gosh, if I knew I was going to be running for this long, I would have not sprinted. I would have paced myself. And like, we're still going. Like, how much longer I'm going to have to keep running. And like, I didn't prepare myself adequately for that. And I think that happened really hard for parents because it wasn't just their adjustment, but then also school and their children's adjustment. Any words I don't know that it needs to be advice. Maybe it's just like words of wisdom or something that you think would be helpful for some like parents out there to hear. I know a lot of moms are like, I feel like a shitty mom because I'm like tired or like frustrated or irritated by my kids. And like, obviously I love them, but like, I just have very little energy or like tolerance for them lately. Anything that feels helpful, maybe something you wish that you had heard or someone had told you that felt helpful.
Well, first, you're not alone. um, yeah, we're annoyed and our patience level is like this much. I think the other day Aria was she's very active imagination. Like she'll just like act out her own scenes, out loud. And she was pretending to be a game. And it's like, I don't know, it's weird. It's like, now press this. Good job. You've gotten to the next level. And she like actually vocalizes this out loud. And it was almost towards the end of the day, and Mike and I are sitting at the dinner table, and we're just like, she needs to shut up. She's not even doing anything wrong. She's using her imagination, like no screens on or whatever. Like she's literally doing nothing wrong, but this child needs to shut up. Because our brains just could not handle the extra noise at that point. And so, you're not like all the parents out there, you're not alone in feeling that way. And I know, and I feel the same way. It's like, oh man, I really wish I didn't feel that way. But like, at the end of the day, like we still love them. Like, and that I still love my kids and we're doing the best we can. And they're doing the best they can in this circumstance. And, like, I don't, I honestly don't know because we struggle every day with that as well. Yeah. But I think knowing that you're not alone and don't feel bad that you feel. And we tell like Riley's a little too young to like really understand it, but like we tell Aria a lot, and she's very aware of what's been going. We talk about it a lot. And we tell her, it's like, yeah, you're doing a great job. You understand a lot. And, or we'll say, it's like, hey, mom and dad are just having a very hard time right now. And we just need a minute. We're just having a rough day, just like both, depending on how old your kids are, obviously, just being honest and open with them. Because I think a lot of the times we might take it for like, they understand more than we think they do.
Yep.
And we kind of have to give them a little bit more credit, and they're struggling too. So kind of have to, maybe if we like open up more about that and kind of go through it together, it could be helpful.
I so appreciate you saying that because that feels also really helpful for people who aren't parents to hear, but just people who are living with other humans, animals, beings that they're not used to being with 24/7. Like I know a lot of folks who are with their partner and they're like, oh, I'm not used to being together this much. It's really frustrating. Or like people who are, I say, lucky enough to have like been spending time at home with parents or extended, more immediate family. Know that maybe it doesn't always feel super lucky and like everyone's patience is wearing thin and people are getting on each other's nerves, but that reminder that like you're not the only ones going through this and everyone is just trying to do the best that they can in a really shitty situation feels helpful to keep in mind.
Yeah. And we're like, we all got dealt with different situations, right? Like we're all dealing with our own things, and parents got dealt with, having to teach their kids and not knowing how or expecting it. And that's a lot of pressure too, and
yep.
We're just do the best you can. Like, well, like as long as you're doing the best you can and you're trying and you're being honest with your kids and working alongside them and with them, and we'll be fine. I think they know that we love them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so it feels like a little bit going back here, but I want to touch on a piece that you said. You've mentioned a few different things that feel like more challenging. Like, obviously, parenting is a lot of time and energy. Running a really successful business takes a lot of time and energy. And, like, I don't know, it's super exciting that Mike's on board. And I imagine it's still a lot of work. And then I also appreciate you bringing in the culture of my family growing up wasn't super conducive to like slow down, take a break, take care of yourself. And so I think you're sharing a lot of things that maybe have been or still feel like challenging to you in terms of like still finding time to care for yourself. And I'm curious, I don't know if there are other things that stand out that like feel like big challenges or like barriers to having time or energy or motivation to do what you need to do and check in with yourself in whatever way that looks like.
Oh man. I think I like fear is like a huge thing for me. Um I think I have to deal with constantly in my head. I'm like, okay, people like my stuff now, but what if like they don't next month? Like they really
Mm.
like the collection right now, but I'm coming out with new design soon, and what if they don't like it? What if they don't like the next one? And
Mhm.
so always finding myself like pushing myself harder and harder, and then the fear of just not having a business anymore, like, and I think that's a lot of small businesses, and I feel like we might all deal with that fear because
Mhm.
it's not like a 9 to 5 job, it's not a reliable income by any means, and
Mhm.
this month can be completely different than next month. And
Yep.
so I always find myself like recently I've gotten a little bit better about that, but it's
Mhm.
like, no, okay, I need to do as much as I can right now in this moment while people like my stuff, because I
Mhm.
don't think that's going to go away. And I need to figure out how to step away from thinking like that.
Mm. Yeah, I that like feels like it's resonating with me a lot right now, and I'm sure there are a lot of other makers who are feeling similarly. And I hear you saying like I'm working on it and making a little bit of progress, or like I'm trying to do approach that differently. And I'm curious to hear like what that piece looks like. Like what are you trying to do?
Well, I looking back at where I started and like what I was doing. It's like, okay, I'm the type of person where I don't like to do just one thing for a very long time. And so, like I said, I started making wooden signs, and then I moved, I was doing crochet stuff, and I was doing shows, and then I started selling knitwear, and I dyed yarn, and I did natural dyeing for a while. And there's just so much that I like to do, and I like to learn new things. And
Mm.
so I think that's something that gives a little bit of comfort to me. It's like, well, okay, sure, like this thing could be a trend right now. There could be a possibility of it fizzling out, but that's not going to stop me from being creative. And
Mm.
I'll find something else to do, and that might, resonate with people, and they might like that.
Mhm.
So, and that was one of the reasons why my the business name is just like this random name, Hello Lavender. It has nothing to do with crochet, it has nothing to do with knitting or fiber or whatever. When I knew I was going to start a business, I knew I didn't want to put myself in this box, because I don't like doing the same thing all the time. And I knew I'm not going to want to do the same thing in my business either. So I don't want to be, like painted, whatever, and I want my business to evolve as I evolve because I'm human and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I absolutely love making stitch markers right now, and it's amazing, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon, but I'm not going to say that this is what I'm going to be doing forever either.
Mhm.
And I think that gives me a little bit of more comfort too. It's like, I think I'll be fine, like this isn't
Mhm.
Hello Lavender now, but it could change in the future and it's fine.
Uh-huh. It almost sounds like finding comfort in the thing that is scary. Like the scariness is that, or the fear is that like trends change and there's evolution and there might be some like ebb and flow in terms of what that looks like. But instead of getting like stuck in the dread of that, it's like, yes, people change, trends change, I change, what I do changes. And like I like have the image of like rolling with the tide instead of trying to swim upstream or be really rigid with like, this is what I'm doing right now. So I have to make it work. Or like I have to keep just doing things that people like, regardless of what that is or how I feel about it. And that feels different because I feel like most people would be like, no, I need to like stop thinking like that. Or I need to like, they give themselves tough love, like cut it out, stop thinking it. And it sounds like you actually sort of flipped it on its head. Like it's fine to think that because that's like a possible reality. And how can I work with that instead of trying to pretend that's not real, ignore it, invalidate like a genuine fear that I have. And that feels cool.
Well, and I think a lot of it for people might come from like how we grew up and what we saw our parents do and the generations before them. Like you went to college, you got a degree, you got the job within that field, and you worked there until you retired, right? And that's just not the case anymore. And I feel like a lot of people who do that are just unhappy as well. And for me, I think it's just silly to think that I'm only going to like this one thing or for the rest of my life until I retire. There's just so much out there that I haven't experienced, that I don't know, that I want to learn, that might pique my interest even more than what I'm doing currently. And I think a lot of the younger generations are saying that too. And I think the people in the creative community feel that and see that as well. It's like we don't need to be in this one field for the rest of our,
Mhm.
we can change and we can learn new things, and then we can try this thing now, and that can be what we do for 5 years, and then we'll go on and do this other thing. And I think for me, I feel like that's going to be more fulfilling for me in my life than just sticking with whatever I'm doing right now.
Yeah. And I so hear that because even my sort of like dabbling and starting by selling knitwear and then like moving into dyeing and designing and that evolution, I feel like I've seen my parents, my grandparents be like mean about it, but sort of like rolling their eyes or like, oh, that's sweet. Like Brianna has a hobby, but she's a doctor. Like that's what actually she does. Like that's what matters. And now that it's like more serious, obviously it's nowhere near full time, but like the fact that it's more serious, I think they're starting to realize that it is possible for people to have a doctorate in something and not want to do that and try different things and do things and open businesses and not work a 9 to 5 doing the same thing forever. And I see them like really confused by it because that wasn't like a possibility for them. In some ways, my grandma's funny. She's like super sassy. she'll be like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then like one day she'll be like, fuck it, do whatever you want. Like, I couldn't do things like that. Like, so I think it's recognizing too that there are a lot of generational differences, and younger generations are breaking the mold a little bit and saying like, that's not how we need to do things. Just because that's how they've always been done doesn't mean we need to keep doing that.
Right. And I think we're also fortunate that we have social media and the internet, and there are companies that allow us to make our own websites, and we don't need to know coding and HTML, you know, and all that stuff. And the reason why probably with our parents' generation or before that, like, yeah, it was harder to open up a business because you had a storefront basically, and if you walk in and you advertised on the radio or the paper and that was it, and that's hard.
Yeah.
Now with social media, we can start our own businesses, and that's the unknown, like, you know, and my parents, and if this is funny, my parents still don't know what I do. You know, it's like, and I'm just like, it's fine. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. It's like, wait, you, like before, it's like, wait, you make hats and you sell them? Like, that's a thing? Or like you dye yarn? Or like now, like the stitch marker thing, it's like a whole thing that just completely goes over their head. So I'm just like, it's fine. Don't worry about me. But like, they don't really know what I do. And
that feels so funny to hear. Like, so funny to hear.
And like, I haven't even told my dad that Mike quit his job and joined me. Like, I think that would like freak him out. My mom knows, and and my mom's a little bit more easygoing. I'm like, don't tell dad. Like, I don't think he's gonna get it just yet. Like, I gotta show him that we're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little harder for them to kind of grasp that. It was definitely different for them, and we're fortunate that we live in a time where we can do our own thing, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And I know we're coming up on time. I know you're an hour earlier than me, but you're busy, and so you probably have things to do. And I do have one question, and I know they're asking it in the chat too. Also, if you can see the chat, people are like agreeing left and right with all the things that are being said.
Yeah. Anything.
One thing that people ask about, and I'm a little bit curious because not just specific to this situation, but hearing the piece of you that's like, I like trying new things and I like doing different things. So Jocelyn was asking how you got into polymer clay. So how you went from knitting into clay. And I guess it feels like a related question is like, what does that look like generally for you? How might you get into something new in the future? Yeah.
Completely randomly. But like, I don't, it's not completely randomly. So I was making tassel earrings and fringe earrings. I don't know if people remember that part of Hello Lavender, and I was pregnant with Riley. So this is like 2018-ish. 2019, I don't know what year. But I was making tassel earrings out of cotton yarn and unraveling it and whatnot, and those were doing pretty well. And I was trying to figure out, okay, well, how can I introduce a new design into the mix? Like, I always wanted yarn and fiber to still be a part of what I do. Mm-hmm. So that's where the polymer clay came in, you know, about 2 years ago, really. And I had bought a bunch, and I found out I was pregnant, and my pregnancy, like, it knocked me out. I was sick the entire time. I was on medication for it. So like, the bag of clay that I had bought to do the earrings with just like sat and sat and sat. And after Riley was born, I was doing some cleaning and I found it, and I'm like, oh crap. and I don't like to waste anything. I will keep it forever or figure out something to do with it. And so I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this stuff? And just like, I don't know, stitch markers just like popped in my head and I made some. I'm just like, no, just give this a try. And I made 6, I think. Like, that's all it was. And like, they were fine. Like, I sold them. I put them up and I sold them, and people really, really liked them. And it was awesome. But now looking back at them, obvious, and that's like the other thing. Like, you don't have to be a pro at anything to like, to start really selling and showing it off to the world. Like, they're completely usable, but like, I've of course gotten better at my techniques and I'm learning, and they're just completely different than what I do now. But yeah, it was just, the stitch markers was random. So like, the idea started off as incorporating them in my tassel earrings and stuff like that, but then it just completely shifted into something else just randomly. So it was kind of connected to what I was doing, but not.
I like that though, because I don't know, like, you don't have to get so rigid or fixed into like, this is what I'm going to do next, or here's how I'm going to get into this other thing or this new hobby. But it sounds like just like staying open to like whatever presents itself to you, whether it's by coincidence, whether it's by, oh crap, I found this bag of clay I was supposed to do something with and I don't want to waste it. And I think that's cool too, like to encourage people. You don't have to be a pro. You don't have to have like this 5-year plan to start or try something new. Like, you can also just try it and see how it goes.
You're always going to be learning, like, and as crocheters and knitters, like, we don't know every single stitch. I'm like, still like, stitches that I've done before, like bind offs, I'm still YouTubing because I don't have it memorized,
Mm-hmm.
and trying something new. And to think that whatever you're doing right now, like, you're going to know every single aspect of it, I think it's just completely ridiculous. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what holds a lot of us back too. It's like, well, I don't have a perfect website. I don't have, this down. I don't know what I'm actually going to be selling. It's like, it's fine. It's like a whole process. Like, you're going to figure it out as you go.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to figure out things that you end up not liking that you started with, and that gets thrown out the window, and you find along the way and you switch it up, and that's totally okay. And I think I love following accounts and businesses that have evolved because of that, and because it's human.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you did something, like, I follow a lot of ceramicists. I'm addicted to pottery, and I own a lot of mugs by Potter, who started early on, and now they're doing, other things, and they've evolved their, throwing skills or whatever. And it's like, and I have a piece from almost every stage, and it's amazing to see that timeline. And I hope people who have a bunch of my stitch markers can kind of see the evolution of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty rad. And like, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you also like get better the more you do something. So like starting, I don't know, I guess there's like some base knowledge maybe that feels helpful to know, but then the more you do it, the deeper you get into the craft, the more you're learning. And like, it's really hard to get to that same place if you're not doing the thing.
Exactly.
If you're not making stitch markers and selling them to people and getting feedback and using them over time and trying different things. And so that like evolution, I feel like the thread here is like evolution is part of the process. Like, that's how it works. And it's actually really cool to be able to like look back and see that evolution.
I mean, I get a lot of questions about knitting sweaters, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm very scared to knit a sweater. How do you start? Like, you can read a pattern a bazillion times. But if you're not going to pick up the needle and the yarn and actually sit down and start it, like you're not going to learn it,
Yep.
and that a lot of stuff. Like I can read everything there is about polymer clay and whatever, but if I'm not actually working with it and getting my hands dirty, like I'm not going to learn anything new. Like, yeah, I have all the verbiage in my head, but that's about it. And that's not really get me anywhere. So, and sometimes like reading those patterns, it might seem like a different language, but like it's like you just have to start and then it starts clicking. So you just have to do it and you have to practice and work with it.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm looking at the clock. I know we're over, but I have two questions. One is quick and one is more exciting. You mentioned Schitt's Creek, and I need to know your favorite Schitt's Creek character because I don't know if everyone knows this about me, but I'm like only got into Schitt's Creek at the end of last year, and I'm like obviously very obsessed. I have a Schitt's Creek yarn and charm club every month. I know it's a hard question to say who is your favorite character, but like right now, maybe in this moment, what characters are you loving?
Oh my, I honestly can't pick. Mike and I have rewatched it about like 100 times and not even exaggerating. It's like our happy place show. It's like down, we turn it on. I don't have a favorite.
That's fair.
They all go through their own journey and they evolve so beautifully. Yes. Like I don't know. Moira's amazing. She's hilarious. One of my favorite moments with her though is during Cabaret backstage when she's talking to Stevie and she gives her this little pep talk, and it is my favorite. I think it is my favorite Moira moment, and it just shows her true heart and how caring she is.
Mm-hmm. I feel that hard. I feel all the things you're saying hard. That was a loaded question. That was an impossible question to answer. There's no right answer there. And also, I feel like most people love Moira, and they love Moira as like the like loud, sort of brazen, bold character. And like, I don't know, sometimes she's like a different flavor of warm. Like her warmth with her family like doesn't seem so warm all the time, but I think moments like that like stand out to me, that are like, yes, that you see a different side of Moira, and so I appreciate that moment. But I had to ask because that feels like an important thing to know. Last question.
Okay.
If anyone has been watching these videos, you know this is my favorite part of the talk. Reshma, do you have a challenge, a homework assignment, a call to action, something that you would like folks to try when they watch this video?
Oh boy.
And you're the finale, so you can like basically do whatever you want. This can be like a smorgasbord of options. This can be like very non-directive. That's like, do you? There's really no rules here.
It's a lot of pressure though.
It is a lot of pressure. I'm like also laying it on thick, just reminding you in case you forgot.
Doesn't make it harder at all. Oh boy. Okay, so this is like the one thing that I really like telling people is we're always told the question, like, where do you see yourself in the next year, 5 years, or 10 years? And I know I've done this before, and it's because I really like it. Instead, don't do that, but go back. Go back in your IG feed or your camera roll, or like look at your past patterns or crocheted items, knitwear, whatever it is that you do. Go back and look at the old stuff and then see how far you've come. And I think when you do that, you almost let out this like deep exhale. It's like that you probably didn't, like, this breath that you probably didn't know you were holding on to. It's like, wow. Because when you're in the moment doing the everyday thing, you kind of forget how far you've come and you don't see any of that. And you're just like, I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. I need to figure out how to do this next. And that puts a lot of pressure and stress on us. And that affects us a lot. And we probably don't realize it. So when you go back and look at that stuff, I think it's relieving and it lets some of the pressure off. It's like, no, I've come along. This is awesome. I'm doing amazing and I'm going to be fine. And I'll keep going, but like, look how far I've come.
I love this. Like my cheeks feel like they're hurting from like smiling so hard, because I don't think there could have been a more perfect way to wrap up this past 5 months, other than like, of course, looking back to see where you've started, whether that's in your craft, whether it's in your Instagram, whether it's some other journey or thing, that evolution that you've been on. Maybe it's your self-care journey, like looking back to week 1 of this challenge and maybe looking at if you posted, like what did those posts look like? What things have you learned about yourself? Where you are now? And the thing I hear you in how you're saying it, even though you're not saying it explicitly, is not to look back as a critic, not to look back as like, oh, that was sort of cringeworthy, or like that was embarrassing, or I didn't know that much, but to look back like you would look back on a friend's account and like celebrate the growth and progress that's happened, rather than criticize for being a beginner at some point.
Right. Well, and we all have to be beginners. Like whatever you're doing, you're going to be a beginner. Kind of hard to avoid that, And I think it's okay to feel a little bit of like, ooh, that's what it looks like. But you know what? Like, that's totally fine, because I was a beginner, like you said, and yeah, look at it more as in the evolution and your journey. I love this journey for you guys, bringing it back to Schitt's Creek. I love this journey for me. And that's totally it, because we all have to start somewhere in order to end up, and the only way to really know the progress you made is sometimes looking back at all the other stuff. It's very therapeutic,
I imagine too, it's important, like you're saying, to recognize the whole picture, like the parts that looked good and like, oh, that was really great, I'm proud of that. But too, like you're saying, like, oof, that was rough, or like, oh, is that really where I started? Like those cringy things, but not use them as weapons against ourselves, not use them to punish ourselves or be mean, but use it as a way to evaluate and like get a more, we're coming full circle here. We started with your knit journey that sometimes you need to take a step back in order to move forward. And so using your time reflecting back as an opportunity to take that step back, see things full picture, and be proud of the progress you've made, the evolution, the journey that you're on.
Exactly.
Perfect. We couldn't have planned that better. I wish we had planned it. I wish we could say that we had planned that, because that felt like really nice and wrapped up in a bow, which isn't normally how I do things. It feels like there's no other words. Usually I ask if you have any other last words or words of wisdom, but I feel like after that mic drop, I don't know if there are words. Are there things?
I might say something that's not as good. So that.
We'll end there. End while we're on top. Resma, this was really fun. I can believe we went over, but like that felt really quick. Like that felt like it flew by. Sorry for keeping you over.
I don't know what time it is, honestly. There are no clocks around me, so it didn't feel long at all. I feel like it flew by.
Okay, cool, good. Thank you. I cannot express my gratitude enough. Like, thank you for coming on. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your honesty, for showing up, not just here like tonight, but I think regularly on Instagram. I think you shared a lot of things today that are really going to be important for people to hear. I mean, we're already seeing it in the comments, but I think a lot of people are really going to relate to some of the things you shared. And it was just really fun. And I don't know, I have a crush always. You're my maker crush. And it was cool to be able to like spend a little bit of time with you and learn some new stuff about you.
Thank you for having me on. I'm obsessed with your yarn. I have a bunch. Yeah, I love you and everything that you do. This has been so much fun.
Cool. I'm glad. I'm glad you took a chance when I messaged you a very long time ago and was like, hey, do you want to do this crazy idea that I have? Because it turned out to be way more than I could have imagined. And so I'm super appreciative to everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks to Mike, if Mike's there and listening, for bringing the wine and also helping take care of our girl so she can do all the cool things that she does. And folks, if you're watching, thank you so much for checking us out. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yourselves. Take care of each other. I can't say until next time because there won't be a next time soon, but there will be a next time. There will be a year 2. We'll be back with new faces, with returning faces, giving us updates and new things where they are in their new journey and what that looks like. So until next time,